Here I am again, your student teacher. This is Teacher Daisy, and today I'm going to discuss the topic clauses. Next slide, please. In this lesson, you will be able to identify the different types of clauses, construct complex sentences by providing subordinate clause to the given main clause, and discuss the difference between a phrase and a clause. But before I will proceed to our next topic, I would like to do a recap first about phrases. Again, at first, the definition of phrase. Phrase is a group of words that does not contain a subject and a verb. Then there are different types of phrases. First is the noun phrase. Second is the verb phrase. Third on the list is adjective phrase. Fourth is prepositional phrase. And the last is verbal phrases. And always remember that every type of phrase has structure. And the overall structure of a phrase does not contain a subject and a verb. Okay, let's proceed. What is a clause? A clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a verb. So, a subject is the doer of the action. Then verb is the action word. So the subject, back to the next slide, Josh. The subject is the who or what the sentence is all about. And the verb is what the subject tells us what the subject is doing. Then, for example, this is an example of a clause. I will eat the food. The pronoun I is the subject and will eat is the verb. So this is an example of a clause. Another example. Please, next. Josh studied in a prestigious school. So the subject here is Josh. This is a clause because it contains a subject and a verb. Subject Josh and the verb studied. Next slide, please. There are types of clauses. First is the independent clause or the main clause. Second is the dependent clause or subordinate clause. Then under the dependent clause is the noun clause or the noun clause, adjective clause, and adverb clause. I will discuss first the independent clause or the main clause. Independent clause or main clause contains a subject and a verb. It can stand alone because it gives us a complete thought. Next slide, please. This is the structure of an independent clause. Subject plus verb equals to complete thought. For example, I went to school. So this gives us a complete thought. There's a subject and verb and a complete thought. I went to school. Then the next example is Daisy drinks pineapple juice. So the subject here is Daisy and the verb is drinks and gives us a complete thought, the pineapple juice, the direct object in the sentence. Then next is the dependent clause. So what is the dependent clause? Dependent clause cannot stand alone in a sentence. It depends on the main clause for making sense, as it does not make complete sense on its own. And it's also called a subordinate clause. Next, Josh. Next slide, please. So, the clause begins with subordinating conjunction. So, these are the examples of subordinating conjunctions. Then, rather than, whether, as much as, whereas, and the reason, because, since, so that, in order, or as. And you can have a complete list, just research it on the internet for additional information. Next slide, Josh. And the structure of a dependent clause is conjunction plus subject plus verb equals incomplete thought. For example, first example is because you like me. So, subordinating conjunction, because, subject you, and the verb like, It doesn't give us a complete thought, unlike to the main clause or independent clause. And another example is whenever lazy students whine. So, because of the subordinating conjunction, the clause it did not give us a complete thought just because of the subordinating conjunction. Next, Josh. And now, I will present to you a Venn diagram to compare and contrast the two main types of clauses. In this side is the independent clause or the main clause, and the other side is dependent clause or subordinate clause. So, both contains a subject and a verb. In independent clause, it can stand alone because it has a complete thought. An independent clause cannot stand alone. It begins with subordinating conjunction. For example, I will eat the food if you taste it first. So, I will eat the food is independent clause. If you remove this word, it gives us a complete thought. I will eat the food. There's a subject and a verb will eat. But still, if we remove these words, this clause, it can stand alone. But if we remove the first clause, I will eat the food, the remaining clause cannot stand alone. So this is the example of dependent clause. If you taste it first, there's still a subject and a verb, but it does not give us a complete thought. Next, Josh. The types of dependent clause will be discussed by Sir Josh. And now, before I end this video, I will leave everyone with a quote. A quote by Jonathan Culver. The English language is a work in progress. Have fun with it. Therefore, learning grammar is fun. Thank you. Hope you learned